Chapter 14 The Leisler Rebellion. Suddenly, all the growth and prosperity of the colony was threatened. On February 6, 1685, King Charles, sitting in the midst of his frivolous court, turned pale, sickened, and died, leaving the Duke of York and Albany to carry on as James II. The way the new king chose to carry on had much to do with the unhappy conditions which followed in New York. He tore up the undelivered Charter of Liberties and Privileges, declared all other charters null and void, recalled Dongan, and appointed Sir Edmund Andros to rule as royal governor over New York, New Jersey, and New England, with Francis Nicholson as his lieutenant on Manna-Hatin. Proud and aristocratic New York now found itself only a part of a general colonial system. With its seal broken and its assembly dissolved, with Huguenot tales of overseas persecution filling the atmosphere with dread, New York felt itself on the eve of some dire calamity. And calamity came. It took the form of Leisler's rebellion, the result of rumor, confusion, and fear. The imprudent James II had lasted on the throne of England only 3 years, when, in 1688, he was overthrown, and William and Mary of Orange were made rulers in his stead. Travelers brought vague news of this to the American colonies, but it was not confirmed for nearly a year, and in the meanwhile there were so many rumors of plots and counterplots that the populace became almost frenzied. Governor-General Andros was deposed and thrown into prison in Boston, the capital of the combined colonies. This aroused the bolder spirits in New York to restlessness. They needed only a leader, and presently he appeared. Jacob Leisler, a merchant of the city, was senior captain of the militia under Colonel Bayard, and collector of the port. He refused to pay duties on cargo of wine on the ground that the collector was a papist. This act at once made him popular with the turbulent element. Bayard, together with the Schuylers, Van Cortlandts, and Livingstons, all members of families which had received royal grants, was wrongly suspected of taking part in a plot to restore the detested James to the English throne. Excitement blazed when Leisler led a mutiny of the militia and seized the fort. Lieutenant Governor Nicholson was arrested and foolishly permitted to sail for England, with his own side of the story prepared for royal ears. It was now easy for Leisler to take control of the city, and he called an assembly that authorized him to act as dictator until a new governor should be appointed by England. He, as well as his son-in-law and lieutenant, Jacob Milborne, undoubtedly felt that they were protecting New York from religious persecution. Rumors that the Count de Frontenac was advancing from Canada to slaughter all the Huguenots and subjugate the town helped still further to establish the temporary leadership of these religious zealots. When the French and Indians actually reached Schenectady, leaving that unhappy village in ruins, Leisler called the first provincial congress from 7 colonies to meet in New York and devise means for a common defense. The plans were hopelessly bungled. An expedition which was sent against the French failed because of mismanagement. The aristocratic families of New York bitterly resented the rule of this son of the people. As for Leisler, an unfortunate lack of balance and a vanity born of his new power led him into all sorts of indiscretions. He embarked on a ruthless policy of throwing all who opposed him into prison, pursued Van Cortlandt, Livingston, and Bayard with a special hatred, so that by the time news of all this had reached William and Mary, he had gone so far that death at the hands of his enemies would have followed had he relaxed the vigor of his persecution. The new sovereign had sent instructions addressed to Nicholson, or such other person as, for the time being, may be in authority, and Leisler naturally interpreted this to mean himself. In 1691, Henry Sloughter was appointed governor of the province. His lieutenant, Ingoldsby, unfortunately arrived in New York ahead of the new governor, with the intention of relieving Leisler, but with no official papers to prove his right. Leisler, therefore, refused to surrender the fort. Skirmishing went on with some bloodshed until Sloughter landed, at which time Leisler, professing to have awaited only the proof of the new governor's authority, surrendered. His apologies and explanations came too late, however, to suit the temper of those he had persecuted, and after a trial, conviction, and sentence that were pitifully swift as well as unjust, he and Milborne were led out and hanged near the present site of the World Building. The sobs and groans of the crowd that collected to watch this execution echoed through the history of New York for years in the bitterness of two parties thus formed, the Leislerians and the anti-Leislerians. Even the sudden death of Governor Sloughter, which followed shortly after the hangings, was believed by many to have been due to a poison plot. This overzealous captain of militia, who had been martyred for what he believed to be only patriotic service to his adopted country and to the new king, was vindicated later by Parliament, which restored his property and his good name to his heirs. Although this was done as an act of their Majesty's mercy, it was in view of the fact that Leisler had not been guilty of treason. The accession of William and Mary gave enfranchisement to the citizens of New York, although certain property qualifications kept the very poor from voting. Having gained so much, the keen merchants of New York entered straightway upon a long campaign for political supremacy, so that meetings of the Assembly became a battleground for the control of funds.